All right, I'm
It's three
recording.
words. It's 3 words, and I'm still writing it down. So that gives you a sense of your superior self. Got it.
All right, go ahead.
Hi, this is Mike Anthony, and this is your superior self.
Mike, welcome to the show. I can't wait. A lot of people are going to recognize you. Um, you are from that Netflix special, Surviving Death. Me and my wife, I think you were our favorite part because it was like you represented us at the very beginning of like where I'm transitioning, right? Like I have a lot of friends and a lot of people that I know that are psychic, and I didn't always know them or know what they did. So I was very much like you. It's like golf. Like you hit that one good swing and you're addicted for life. Psychics are kind of like that. You get one really good reading that really resonates with you, and now you're hooked. Talk about that. Like, how did you get set up with the Netflix? I know it's a long story, but how'd you get set up in the Netflix documentary, and what's your story?
Yeah. Well, first, I mean, I totally get that what you're saying about that sense of addiction. I do recall hitting in my lifetime one true golf ball. Seriously, one time at a driving range. Been searching for that feeling the rest of my days. And yeah, when you have an experience like I've had with mediumship, something that like completely shatters your sense of what's supposed to be and what's normal. It's definitely for me there was some euphoria there connected to that. It's like being high for a minute, because you're just touching something that feels otherworldly. you know and so yeah, what happened is my dad died. And before, right now I'm an actor, I'm a bartender, and do these other things. But initially, I had planned on being a science teacher, a high school science teacher. So that's what I'd gone to college for at first. And science is unequivocal about this. The mainstream scientific paradigm says that when you're dead, you're dead. Period. That's the end. And when my dad died, like every lecture I'd ever had by a from a biology professor was like crushing me. And the thought that my dad, who was an amazing guy, and we were incredibly close, and the thought that somebody like that, all of those ideas and love and passion and everything that he ever was, could just disappear, like he'd never been here. I was having a real trouble, like, figuring out why I'm going to leave my apartment today. What's the point of doing anything if somebody like that can just disappear? And that's kind of the place I was in when mediumship came sort of just careening into our lives. Mediumship is something that, it, if you're involved in it, if you know about it, it's something you have sought out. Probably, typically a person will call a medium if they're in grief and looking for some sort of healing. And of course, when we're grieving like that, we're grasping for any kind of straws we can find. But in our case, someone who claims to be a medium, a complete stranger, a woman we'd never met, my dad had never met, claimed that my dad had contacted her, desperate to get a message to us, to his family, that he was okay. And this phone call came into my mom's house one night, like a day or two after we buried my dad. This phone call comes in from a second cousin telling us about this medium friend of his who is claiming my dad is talking to her. So that's how I became involved, or first got interested in the idea of mediumship. I knew about it from like television, from John Edward, and Crossing Over was a big show when I was in high school. But, I assumed that if there were truly anybody walking around the planet who could talk to dead people, I was sure one of my science professors would have said, oh, by the way, right after teaching us about like cell division and whatever, they would have said, oh, and yeah, there's some evidence that some brains are able to talk to dead people. But since no science professor had ever said that to me, I just assumed there could not be a whole lot to it.
Mm,
So that's the place that I was in when that phone call came in.
sure. No, you'd be surprised. Like I wish I did more studying in philosophy because actually Plato had the ancient Greece civilization had ways of contacting the dead. I just never knew about it. I saw that on your website, you went to the University of Virginia. I've become well, I call him my unofficial mentor. He might not recognize it as that, but Dr. Raymond Moody, who wrote Life After Lives or Life After Life, he talks to me all the time about Plato. It's he has a book called Paranormal, and in that book he talks about this method called scrying, which if you don't know what it is, Google it. It's pretty amazing, where you have a mirror and you sit down and you concentrate and meditate. It's a whole process. Anyway, like I would say like 60% of the participants in his study actually had contact with a loved one that was deceased. And it came from the ancient Greek method. And I wish I just studied more about it. But I mean, that's just, you know, a long time of people with civilizations covering things up and not telling us, because, you know, obviously it goes against everything that we've been programmed to believe in. But yeah, I truly enjoyed the documentary that you were involved in. I truly enjoyed listening to your documentary that you're doing, or you have done that.
It's still sort of in the process. I was
Mm-hmm.
in the middle of it when the Netflix thing came along. So then I paused it while that was happening. But yeah, we think that once the world gets a little bit back to normal, we're going to pick that up again.
Sure. I really enjoyed the part where you went to the University of Virginia and you started talking about reincarnation and some of the
Yeah.
statistics they had. They had like 2,500 cases, and I mean, they are leading the world of science in like paranormal studies, and I'm a big fan of UVA. The one thing I did want to talk to you about was you did like a double blind study in your documentary with like a psychic. Like you had a psychic, I forget her name, Angelina or something like that.
Angelina Diana. Yeah.
Yeah, you had her come in and we're doing like double blind studies with her with strangers coming off the street. Like it was
Yeah.
incredible. Like talk about that. Like
Yeah.
how was
Yeah.
that?
Now, I want to be careful because, like, the whole time I'm like making this documentary, I'm saying things like, we're going to do this experiment today, and I'm using that word scientific and experimentation. And when I went to talk to a woman named Dr. Julie Beischel, who's like a real scientist and not a bartender pretending to be a scientist, I got scolded for using the word experiment because I had no idea how tight controls should actually be. She's doing something called quintuple blind
Sure.
experiments where 5 levels of blinding. So anyway, but I was doing casual tests, and what happened was we had this sitting with this medium that my sister hired. She said things that there's just no way she could have known. I mean, I was completely blown away by the stuff she said, like highly personal, to the point of like almost quoting a private conversation my sister and I had a couple of days before. I mean, there's it's all in the book, all of these examples of the things she said that she just couldn't have known. So like a year after that, the skeptical part of my brain just could not let this go. Like I had to get more to the bottom of this. And I basically called her and said, listen, I have to know if what you're doing is real, if you're actually doing what you claim you're doing. I'd like to make a documentary where I sit you down in front of a camera, I hit record, and then I walk complete strangers into the room. So that I'll know there's no way you had any time to do any cheating, any Googling, or anything else. And I want to see if you can get the kind of information for them that you got for me when I know you don't know who these people are. And right away, this woman said, yeah, I'll do that. Like right away. And she signed the release, by the way, too, for the documentary, which is, that takes a filmmaker with an editor can make anyone look amazing or terrible. I mean, it's all in the hands of the editor. So she trusted right away that my intentions were in the right place, that I truly was just looking for the truth, and that she was going to do a good enough job that it was going to make her look good. And she sure did. I mean, she came up with stuff. And, by the end of it, I kept on sort of evolving the measures we were using while we were testing her. So by the end of it, we had a screen set up. So she never even sees the person she's doing the reading for. She's sitting behind a screen. And then I start thinking, well, maybe she's picking up on auditory cues. Maybe her brain is set up in some crazy way. We know that the brain does amazing things that we don't understand. There are savants that can, we just know that there are instances where brains are formed in a way that they do something that's really crazy. That's very unusual. And maybe her she's got some mutation in her brain that allows her to pick things up, from a person's voice. So by the end of it, I have them behind the screen and they're not talking anymore. I have them using, they're just like hitting a button for yes, no. I'll just give you just for one example of the kind of information she got. We had a young girl come, and there's some video of this young girl on the website, and you see her kind of being blown away in the clip that I have there. Her brother had died when she was only 2 years old and he was 19. And he was like, according to her dad, this brother loved this girl. He was like a fatherly figure to her, and just totally in love with his little sister. And then tragically, when he was 19, flipped his car on the highway and it exploded, and he died in this explosion of flames. So the girl comes in, and Angelina says, like, immediately. And again, this is at the point where there's a screen and no one's talking. And Angelina says, I have somebody here who feels like an older male figure to you. He has a fatherly type of an energy. And then she says, immediately after that, I smell gasoline. He died in an explosion. And I was like, well, I mean, if you're a fraudster, having that be your first guess and only guess, by the way, she never said any other mode of death, only explosion. If you're guessing at things, you'd be much better off saying, hey, is there someone in your family, a male who maybe had like some heart problems? Because chances are that there's going to be a yes somewhere in somebody's family to that. To ask right off the bat that somebody died in an explosion, I smell gasoline, that's a crazy chance to take. That would be an insane stab in the dark. And under the circumstances that it all happened, to me, the Occam's razor answer was that this woman was either using some form of telepathy and picking up information from a human brain in some way that science does not currently say is possible, or she was talking to a dead person who was giving her this information. I mean, those are the simplest explanations, in my opinion.
Man, it's amazing. Yeah, I've listened to. I'm in love with consciousness. I want to know more about it. I want to evolve my own consciousness. And I constantly have conversations with psychics and people that have gifts with that, and they consistently blow my mind with I wouldn't say evidence, but the stories that they're telling me from the other side that resonate with me. And I'm not saying yes or no. I'm just listening. I'm just kind of listening to what they're saying. And I mean, I'm always getting hits, and it's not like, it's like what you said. It's like things that they're saying resonate because they're so specific to what, how I remember them, or what, was involved when I was around them. It's just incredible. And the paradigm needs to shift. I mean, you talked about science, the materialists, like, I get it. They're, they want to see evidence, hardcore evidence. They want to see, causal and effect. But I think we're at, we're at a crossroads. The paradigm needs to shift. I don't know how you shift it, but there are things that we cannot explain in this universe. The universe is crazy, and it's like things happen, and I don't know, we're at that crossroads.
I mean, in my opinion, the evidence is available. Like, there is hardcore evidence. When I went to talk to Dr. Tucker, Jim Tucker, who is the head of the Division of Perceptual Studies at UVA, this guy's like a brilliant psychiatrist, child psychiatrist. He's a brilliant guy, as was Ian Stevenson, the guy who started the division at UVA 60 years ago. He recently passed, but that guy, he was 35 years old when he was given the chairmanship, that's insane. He had published like 300 peer-reviewed studies. Papers in peer-reviewed journals. This guy, as I said to Dr. Tucker, I mean, these are not like mad scientists working out of basements. These are some of these people are scientists of renown. And you talked about like Scrying and Plato. It's now clear to me that there's been a ton of evidence going back thousands of years, right? That has been sort of swept under the rug. If we look here in America, there's a guy named William James. He was the founder of the psychology department at Harvard University. This guy was another brilliant guy. He spent 20 years studying a medium, 20 years studying this woman named Lenora Piper in New Hampshire. And that brilliant guy, after 20 years of intensely rigorous research, concluded that this woman was doing something genuine. And the statistics, you can go if you want and read all about these studies. But the evidence to me is clear. It's as clear as day that the universe does not work in the way that the materialist scientists believe that it does. And it's not just one line of evidence. There's like a ton of stuff out there. These kids who have these memories of previous lives, which is what Dr. Tucker spends his time working on. I mean, that evidence alone is so astounding that the book editor for JAMA, the Journal of the American Medical Association, one of the most respected, scientific medical journals in the whole world, when that guy finally took a look at one of Dr. Stevenson's case studies, he came away with the conclusion that reincarnation is the most likely explanation. Sure. The book editor from JAMA said that. And yet almost nobody heard about this. Almost no one heard about it. If JAMA came out tomorrow and they said, oh my gosh, you know what? We just found out that chocolate is not as bad for you as we thought. That would be splashed across headlines. It would be all over the place. But they come out and say, listen, it looks to us like reincarnation might be real. And it's like crickets. It's crickets. Nobody heard about it. So there's definitely something going on here beyond just a lack of evidence, because the evidence is there. The evidence is not lacking. It's there in so many different ways, in so many different places. There's a wall that's up. And that's what I'm sort of, what folks like yourself are kind of chipping away at every day, is this this wall that for a multitude of reasons has been put up. And for some people, it's just impenetrable. There are debunkers because at the beginning of this whole journey for me, I have great respect for science. I'm a guy of average intelligence. People who are super smart have my absolute respect. I mean, there are brains on this planet that completely astound me. And the whole time that I'm seeing these things that I'm seeing, personally experiencing, I'm wondering what I'm missing, right? If these super smart people are telling me that consciousness is something that's brain created, and that disappears when the brain stops receiving oxygen, I must be missing something, right? That's the only explanation. Since they're so smart and I'm so not, there's some way I'm being duped here. And that was nagging at me this whole time until something happened, and I write about it fully in the book. I actually hesitated to put it in the book because it's going to be so far beyond the average person's boggle factor, what Jim Tucker calls the boggle factor, that I worried people would read my book and then get to the end and think, oh my God, this guy's just nuts. But I had to put it in because it is the ultimate truth. And when it happened, by the way, I was sitting beside a journalist for the New York Times who also wrote about it. And she has to be, given her job, she has to be incredibly careful about what she publishes and even what she says. And she wrote about this as well. All I can say is I promise you it happened, and it's real, and it happens every Monday night. Something happens that tells me without a doubt, I now know that no matter how smart any scientist is, no matter how many Nobel Prizes might be sitting behind them on the shelf, if they say to me there's no such thing as anything paranormal or that we are, consciousness is created by the brain and that's that, I know that they're wrong now. I know that they're wrong.
So you're going to leave me on the edge of my seat. So this thing that
I can tell you more about it.
The thing that happens in the book happens every Monday.
Yeah, I can tell you more about it. So their mediumship is, we can divide into two parts, and the Surviving Death goes into some of this. Surviving Death, the Netflix show. There's mental mediumship, which is what most of us are familiar with. That's where the medium is conscious. They're staying conscious, and they claim that they're getting messages in various ways that they're then interpreting and delivering to us. There's another form of mediumship called physical mediumship. And in that case, the claim is that the medium goes into a deep trance. So they're no longer in a waking state of consciousness. And in fact, the trance is so deep, typically, that the medium claims they don't remember anything at all. It's like they're going to sleep. Now, we can prove some aspect of this by using electroencephalograms. So we've hooked physical, including the one that I know and have witnessed this thing with. We've put an EEG machine on him, have him go into a trance, and his brain wave patterns definitely absolutely shift. So something genuine is happening. That we can at least say. His brainwave pattern is going from a normal beta waking brainwave pattern into something, an alpha dominated wave pattern, which is not a typical waking state. So something's going on. And then the claim is that once the medium, the physical medium, is in this deep trance state, the spirit world, this is what they say, is able to manipulate the medium's body and use it to communicate directly, either by using the medium's vocal cords and speaking in their own words, or in the most advanced cases, now this is I spend a whole lot of my life now sort of whispering, like I get to this part of the story and I have to like look over my shoulder. But in the most advanced forms of physical mediumship, the spirit world is able to use something called ectoplasm, which is something that I was absolutely 100% sure Harold Ramis had written for Ghostbusters. Like I was sure that's where that word came from, but it's not. That is a word that was coined by a guy named Charles Richet. Speaking of Nobel Prizes, he won the Nobel Prize in physiology. So this guy did not win the Nobel Prize in like astronomy or math. He won it in the study of the human body. And he investigated this stuff, even took it to a lab, looked at it under a microscope. I mean, this stuff is real. And it's some kind of a substance that, according to the world of physical mediumship, it's a substance that exists in everyone to a greater or lesser degree. Physical mediums are people who have an abundance of it. And so then the spirit world is able to sometimes use it to physically manifest in the room. So at 1 minute, you're sitting in the room with 5 human beings, and the next minute, there are 6 people there, and you're seeing them. I have a photograph in the book, and the only reason I put it in the book is because I am convinced of its authenticity. I went to England. I met the family of the guy who took that photograph. He recently passed away. But having met them, spent time with them, getting to know them, I have zero doubt, because there's just no reason for them to lie about this. There's none. They've never made any money on this. That photograph is real. And that is a photograph, but as crazy as it looks in the book, it looks like a woman standing there sort of in a silk robe or silk sheets. That is not. That is a person draped in ectoplasm, freaking ectoplasm. She started out as like a puddle on the floor, grew up to like a 5-foot height, a column of like this white flowing stuff, and then her face formed and she was a person. And I know that sounds insane. I know it sounds insane. The only reason, again, that I talk about it and that I put it in the book is because I have now witnessed this myself. I have witnessed with my own eyes multiple times a freaking human hand form out of nothing, out of a misty, amorphous. It's very difficult to describe how this stuff moves.
Well, what do you like? I feel like I saw that part in the documentary, and like it freaked me out a little bit, right? Like especially when the lady was talking like in different voices and stuff.
Yeah.
I can do the medium stuff, but like when that stuff happens, it's kind of like, all right, what, it's kind of iffy. But you said you've seen it with your own eyes. Like what is going through your mind? Like I'm sure your heart is just pumping, like, oh my God, like this is happening. Like what is going through your mind when you see this hand?
Yeah. I remember saying out loud, what am I looking at? I mean, I was totally blown. I mean, I had read about it because, again, this woman, Leslie Kane, the journalist for the Times, had written about it. So I'd known about what supposedly happened, and I trusted her word. But being in the room that night and watching it, and to throw a little wrench into the proceedings, like I asked if I could kneel down. It happens right on top of this little table that's between the medium and the sitter, which was Leslie. So I asked if I could kneel down to be right on top of it, and they said sure. So I was literally 5 inches from this thing, and yeah, I mean, it was a moment. It was a shattering moment, in a positive way. Like, my dad dying shattered me in one way. This was something else. This like opened me up. I mean, when I saw this happen, and I allowed myself to believe I was seeing what I was seeing, and it took a few times. I got to see the hand form multiple times, and now I've seen it form in multiple different places. Now I've seen it a bunch, but that very first night, I mean, your whole world kind of turns upside down, and it's like you're given this peek behind this veil, and it felt like I felt like I'd been living my whole life kind of in one movie, right? Kind of like one, like lighthearted comedy kind of a movie where I had a good sense of how things work. And then instantly, in a second, I'm living in this totally different genre of film where these crazy things are possible and happen. And now I don't understand anything about how the universe works. Because this hand, like, the question of whether or not this is actually a spirit person using this hand, or is this some human ability we don't understand yet? That obviously I have no idea. Sure. The spirit of the people who produce this, the physical mediums, they are very clear about it. They say it's definitely not them. They're passed out. It's the spirit world. I still have questions about how it actually happens, obviously, but to know that it happened. I mean, I think about this all the time. Like, like one of my favorite scientists is a guy named Brian Greene. He's a pretty popular string theorist. He wrote a book called The Fabric of the Cosmos, which is great. He's one of these, he's intensely brilliant, but he's able to dumb it down for me, for the layman, to kind of get some sense of what the deep math that his brain can do is telling us, practically speaking. And the guy is just wildly smart. Sure. And I think to myself all the time, man, I wish I could get that guy to come sit with me in this little room on Monday night and watch this happen. Because right now, that big brain of his is operating without all of the information. It doesn't know yet that this really happens. In fact, it thinks it doesn't. He thinks that does not happen. And what could we learn if people of that caliber were able to investigate this stuff?
Sure.
So,
I mean, that'd be amazing. I mean, you would turn society up on its head. I mean, it's insane. I think, what you're talking about is, we're at that last frontier, right? The consciousness is like, it's something that we need to invest more money in and trying to learn, because I think we are so much more powerful than what we think we are, right? Like I've seen evidence of people doing miraculous things. I mean, just stories, the more that I research, like what you're talking about, string theory, the more that I research about quantum mechanics, quantum physics. I mean, it's just so much. There's nothing absolute in this universe. There's nothing absolute whatsoever. And it's like, growing up, you want to believe that your parents are right. You want to believe that society's right. And you have to do X, Y, and Z to be successful. But the more that I'm learning is like, no, that's not it at all. And it's scary. It can be scary because we have these deep, deep beliefs. You know what I mean?
Totally. Absolutely. And I think that you just hit on a big reason why that wall that we were talking about is there. There's a deep comfort in your mom and dad saying, listen, pick whatever religion, we're this. And they say, and these are the rules. If you're a good person, you don't kick your sister, you're as nice as you can be, eventually you're going to end up in heaven and we'll all be happy and that'll be great. Like, to be able to just believe that those are the rules, that's very comforting. That makes it super simple. To start to have that faith in those stories break down, and now you're an open, like sort of a blank sheet again, that takes courage to look into the abyss and say, okay, we're starting from scratch here, trying to figure out what this is all about. What is this all about? Sure. What are we doing here? Yeah. To start from square one. Yeah, I totally get why that is scary. And I have to, like myself, there are definitely days where I have to stop. I have to put this away for a minute and just go to the store and buy some bananas and play with a puppy and just stop thinking about this stuff,
It is. But it's hard to live here, right? Like, it's hard to live in this reality sometimes, especially when you see things like that and you experience things like, I'm a big believer in reincarnation. I mean, you read the near-death experience books and you're like, there's something to it. You can't have so many cases of near-death experiences. And they are different, but there's a unified, like this painting that they paint. It's like every single one of these individuals are having almost the same experience, but not quite. Yeah. And it's like the stories behind it are just so fascinating. And then you talk about, talking to mediums and listening to their stories. And then there's just so many other things out there that have done it for me, that it's hard for me to be like, to live in this everyday life of living inside of this mechanism that we are society, right? Like, I told my wife, I was like, man, if anything happens like with us, I'm going to India and I'm going live in caves and meditate and try to figure out consciousness, because like it's hard. Like today,
I get it.
I get my buddies are all kind of like, you need to start researching, Bitcoin and all this and that. And I'm started watching YouTube on it, and I'm like, I can't even get into this stuff, man. Like I just don't care. Like what I care about is advancing my consciousness and learning more about this stuff so that people can be more aware. Like I totally believe in a collective consciousness, a collective unconscious, just like Jung did. And I believe that everything that I do contributes to that. Everything's energy. I believe that I do believe in the law of attraction. I believe that we create our own realities, and that you attract in your life, like your outside world is a reflection of the inside world inside of you. And it's tough. It's tough to go back, and live your life in a world that is very materialistic. I mean, I don't know if you
Yeah.
have that problem now or not.
Yeah, oh, for sure. I mean, not as much as people who have had near-death experiences, though. Like that's something that I'm really fascinated by, and I've spoken with people who've had near-death experiences, and I've read all their books and everything. But I've actually, like, one of my favorite things to do now is talk to people, because now people know that I'm into this stuff. And I like literally, I was out at a backyard party, and some guy was like, "Hey, come here." My nephew's friend's dad. It was my nephew's friend's stepdad, actually. He's like, "Hey, come here." And he's like, I died. And I was like, what? And he told me this, he told me this whole thing. And that one of the things that is very typical of these experiences is that when they come back, they have a real hard time. People can have a real hard time
Yeah, living here.
reintegrating
Yeah.
into this materialist world. And what you just said about like moving to India and like living in a cave and just focusing on consciousness, like that happens a lot. People,
Yeah.
relationships have ended after near-death experiences because people are like, listen, I just can't, and they're not interested anymore in material possessions. They get rid of a lot of their stuff often, and start living a simpler life,
Sure.
and really start focusing on all of this. So
Yeah.
that's also evidence for me of the reality of that, because the effects are profound. People who have the neuroscientists say that these are hallucinations, that these are dreams, that it's an effect of an oxygen deprived brain, and blah blah blah. No dreams, no hallucination, no oxygen depravity has this lasting effect on people, because people like Dr. Moody and Dr. Grayson have looked into it.
Yeah.
They've checked in with people who have had a cardiac arrest, people who have had a near-death experience, and those who did not, and then followed them 5, 10, 15, 30 years down the road. And the people who have a cardiac arrest and then they're resuscitated but don't have any memory of an NDE, sure, that they're glad to be alive again, and they might have a new appreciation for that, but it very quickly tails off and they become back down to baseline again. People who have a near-death experience during this, it affects them for the rest of their lives. There's no tail off, as far as we know, in the effect. And of course, I'm generalizing here. As you said, near-death experiences are as varied as there are people, but there are themes that are sort of overarching, and that's one of them, that it affects people for the rest of their lives. And you tell me how many dreams do that.
Well, dreams, right? Like, so you're telling me, right? Like, I barely have like my dreams are all over the place, like all the time, right? Like I can remember my dreams, but they're all over the place. So you're telling me that all these people are dreaming the same thing. You know what I mean? They're having the
Yeah.
same type of dream. Like, get out of here with that. Like, no.
Yeah.
I mean,
And
but Raymond Moody is he's very scientific with his research. He's like, he'll tell you, he'll be like, yeah, I've gotten you to the pearly gates. I haven't gotten you on the other side. I haven't proven. I don't have data that supports life after death. I've just gotten you to what they experience up to a certain point, and then they come back, which I can respect that.
Sure. Yeah. He's a scientist, and he's being a scientist. And ultimately, I don't know that we'll ever be able to say with 100% certainty that we survive death. The theory that some people have proposed is quote unquote super psi. If it's not actual life after death, it's an ability that some human brains have. It's basically unlimited psychic abilities. So they're able to pull information out of any brain they want to, out of the field, maybe, or the Akashic record, whatever word, the 0 point field, whatever words we want to use to describe the quantum energy field, that some brains are able to pull information out of that. And it's not actually survival of death. it's a function of a human brain. To me, the evidence, of course, that's possible. You can never, again, say with 100% certainty that that's not the answer. But to me, the whole of the evidence, the preponderance of evidence, does point to survival of beyond death. I mean, and one of the other fantastically fascinating aspects of NDEs are veridical NDEs, where someone has something happen that is later that they can verify. And Dr. Moody talks about these, and they're hard to find, obviously, but they are out there, and some of them are amazing.
Sure.
It's one of the ones that started Dr. Grayson on it changed his whole life and his whole career path, was when a girl who had been dead when he saw her, she had tried to commit suicide, I think, and she saw like this stain he had on his tie. He was down in the cafeteria at the hospital eating like spaghetti, got some bolognese sauce on his tie, got embarrassed about it. He was like a new doctor there in residency. So he stuffed it, put his lab coat on and buttoned it all up. And the next day when this girl came out of it, she was like, I guess, in a coma for a bit. When she came out of it, she said, yeah, I know you. I saw that stain on your tie. And there are tons of stories like that where people,
Sure.
they'll go down the hall, for instance, and maybe overhear a conversation word for word that their family is having in the waiting room at the hospital, while people are frantically trying to resuscitate them and we know the exact timing of all of this. If they're like on the operating room table and they're hooked up to all of the monitoring equipment, so we know the moment that their heart stopped beating and that all of this was going on. So there are some really fascinating documented cases, and people are slowly coming around. Like there's a guy named Dr. Parnia at Stony Brook, and he did something called the AWARE study, and they did not find the results they were hoping to find. That was the study where they put like something on a high shelf facing the ceiling that they were hoping someone who had a near-death experience would see. But as NDEers have said, dude, you think I was looking for your freaking symbol in the corner? I just came out of my body. I'm like, what the F is going on here? I was not looking for your symbol up in the corner. But anyway, Dr. Parnia has come away from that study, and he was like a real materialist scientist from what I can gather before this. He came away saying, you know what? There's something going on here. We got to study. Even though they didn't get the results they were hoping for, something happened that made him think, okay, I don't understand that. And so he's now on the other side of this thing.
Wow, that's awesome, man. Like, where are you at now? Right. Like, so, I mean, you started this journey. You were kind of like that skeptic, like open-minded skeptic, intellectual skeptic. And now it seems like you're bought in on this.
Totally. I mean, now, again, given what I saw, I have no choice. I mean, it's real. So yeah, now I'm sort of where you are,
Yeah.
wondering, I spend a lot of time at the beach, just thinking about what am I doing here? I now believe that reincarnation is definitely a real thing. I think the evidence for that is very clear, given again UVA, and that's not just UVA. There are researchers all over the world, literally the world, that are contributing to Dr. Tucker's
Sure.
work. And
do you ever
so
try like meditation? Do you ever try to reach out and talk to your dad? Because you have a book out titled Love Dad, and it's about that experience. Do you ever try for yourself to connect with him on like meditation or channeling?
Yeah, I've recently started doing some meditation, like maybe a year and a half ago. I've started meditating. I'm a bad meditator. It's very hard for me to quiet my brain, so I'm working on it. But I mean, I connect with my dad, and that's where the book really came from. He instigated all of this stuff. My dad, as it turns out, is like a master at getting signs back through whatever the veil is between wherever he is and where we are. Things started happening immediately after his death that science could just not explain. And I write about them all in the book. I mean, some of them were truly astounding.
Can't wait to read this book now, man. You got me hooked.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, how has your life changed since the documentary?
It's changed a lot in that it's really my sole focus now is thinking about this. As I said, like I now think that we live lots of times, and to me, the evidence suggests that we decide to do that. Like it's a choice to come back, And why did I do that this time? What am I, what am I here for? I'm trying to remember. So yeah, I mean, it's totally,
Have you ever
it's
gotten
also,
your Akashic records done? Like, have you had that reading yet?
no,
Oh, dude, you're missing
no.
out. You got to do that. You got to find
Yeah.
somebody. I know a person. Oh, it's awesome.
Yeah.
Um,
I'd love to try
because
that.
like obviously the Akashic records is supposed to be like, everything, Edgar Casey was pulling from these, like it's everything that's ever been collected. That is, the past and the future, everything. And they pull from that and they kind of, they, they can basically tell you, maybe not what your destiny is, but what you're doing right now. And if that equals to what you should be doing, I mean, it's pretty powerful stuff, man. Like,
Yeah. I'll check that out.
I mean, just to think that, just believing in that there is, we come back here life after life. We choose to come back, whatever that order is. I don't know if we, how that works, but it's all for development, right? Like for our higher self, our superior self. And we're trying to get better. We're trying to,
Yeah.
evolve as a being. I mean, I enjoy that more so than thinking that I got to be perfect one time, go live up in heaven
Wow.
for eternity, sitting on a cloud, just hanging out. Like
Yeah.
I'd rather keep coming back. You know what I mean? Regardless of what
Yeah,
that life
man.
looks like, but just keep coming back and getting in the game and
Totally.
you know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like,
Yeah. People say to me all the time, like, because I'm involved with a lot of people who are very spiritual and they spend a lot of time thinking about this stuff. And they're like, we're all one, man. We're all one. Ultimately, we're all going back to one. And I'm like, I don't know. That sounds kind of crappy, man. Like, if I'm all like, who am I? If we're all just one, like, who do I call to have a pizza with on Friday night? It's just me, right? Like, ultimately, if we're truly just one, and I can imagine if that was the case, no wonder we're doing this thing, man. We would have been bored out of our mind if it was just me sitting in space, just one with myself. You know,
yeah, yeah.
that would get boring pretty fast, I think.
Have you ever
So
read Robert Monroe at all?
yeah,
Um,
I have. Not yet. I have it sitting. I just got it. Out of
which
body,
one?
the out of body
Yeah,
guy.
he's got a trilogy, right? His last book is, you have to read the trilogy, but his last book is a good, he wraps it up pretty good, really nicely in that oneness talk. Like,
Oh,
he
okay.
he 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 doesn't prove anything, obviously, but his experiences are very insightful for us. Like if you believe in that sort of thing, which,
Mm,
at the very beginning, Robert Monroe thought he was going nuts. Like he thought he was crazy. Like he didn't know what was going on. He's like,
yeah.
doubting himself. He's going to see psychiatrists. He's going to see doctors. He's thinking he has cancer or tumor or something. And they're like, no, Bob, like you're good, man. Like I don't know what's going on, but you're
Yeah. Yeah.
A-okay. You're a clean bill of health. And so instead of running from it, he, and I'm sure all this, he investigates further. He does scientific studies on himself and creates hemisync. And this is like an actual technology that we use today to help produce out of body experiences for the average Joe, for you and I, right? But I
Yeah.
mean, we still got it. We need help in that. Like Tom Campbell, who is he's got, like, it's funny, his hemisync is like the Lamborghini of
Hmm.
hemisync. He $30, you can get it online. And I'm telling you, dude, this
Wow.
hemisync is legit. Like it's like it puts you in different, it unifies the brain, right? Like from left and right brain. Hemispheric synchronization. And I haven't had a full out of body experience yet. I'm still trying, right? Like I want to achieve that one day. And he has, like, programs where you can invest your money and try to produce this for yourself, like, online, like Zoom, for like a week. They do the hemisync and they try, a lot of people, it's happened for a lot of people. um but to experience that, like, it's interesting, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's
Yeah. I
pretty
mean,
intense.
I've had just a couple of lucid dreams in my life, where you wake up in the dream, which is something
Sure,
similar, maybe a precursor to Monroe, what Monroe and others are doing. And those are like the best dreams of my life. And I remember them, to
because you're
this
in
day.
control, man. You're in
Total
control of
control.
that.
You could do it anything you want. Yeah.
Sure,
Yeah.
that's awesome, dude. Mike
Yeah.
Anthony on the show, I can't believe it. He was just on Netflix. I just watched him the other night, Surviving Death. How can people connect with you?
MikeAnthony.com is the website, and people have been sending me a ton, especially since Netflix, a ton of their own personal stories, which I love. I love getting. I haven't gotten back to everybody yet, but I do read them. People blowing my mind every day. So please feel free to email me with anything like that. And the books are available on Amazon and on the website too.
Awesome, man. Last question, kind of big. What do you want your legacy to be?
Well, I mean, if again, just to go back to near-death experiencers one more time, something that they've all told me, the ones that I have spoken with, when they come back, is that they now realize how powerful we all are individually, how much power we have to affect each other and therefore the universe. And I had a guy say to me that if we had any idea how powerful not only our words are, but even just our thoughts, we would be way more careful about those thoughts. So I think what this guy especially said is the most important thing to him at this point is to just be as kind as possible. There's a real energy to that. There's a real energy to just being as kind as you can be. And that's what I try to do. I try to be real careful in each of my interactions, as much as I can, even real quick ones, like just getting coffee at Starbucks, just like really saying thank you to the person that's giving it to me, and like really saying it, and connecting for a second. And so I hope my legacy is one of, a guy who did what he could most of the time to leave the world kinder in the moments that he could than before he got there. And also think it's important that we maintain our sense of humor about all of this stuff. I think I think humor is here for a reason. I've always felt like there's something special about humor. I remember finding like Robin Williams when I was a kid, and like I'd be on the best, and I'd be on the playground, and people would be like, making fun of each other and hurting each other. And as a young empathetic kid, I was really troubled by all of that. But then finding Robin Williams, I was just like thrilled to find out that the universe also had that in it. And I think there's something important about that. So I hope that answers your question in some roundabout way.
Be kind, man. That's what I got out of that. Be kind. Yeah. Be kind. Mike Anthony, man, I can't thank you enough for coming on the show and taking the time out of your busy schedule to have a conversation, because I think you're doing important work, dude. And I think you're you're doing the thing that you're supposed to be doing. So thank you so much, dude.
It's been a real pleasure. I appreciate it. And thanks for doing what you do. I mean, you're one of the people out there like with the pickaxe chipping away at that wall, like all the time. So thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.